Thank you so much for tuning into my channel. Today's tutorial is going to be on how to color match your foundation. This is an area that tons of us struggle with, so if this is a video of interest for you, then please continue watching. So let's get started. In this tutorial, I'm going to go over 4 steps that are very important in determining your color match for foundation. There are various forms of foundation. You will have liquid foundation, cream foundation, and there is a powder base foundation as well as stick foundations. So these are the various types of foundations that you'll find in any drugstore or any beauty store. So let's talk first of all about liquid foundation. Liquid foundation actually can work for pretty much any skin type. I'm actually a combination skin type, so I have oily skin in the T-zone and the rest is a little drier. I'm actually a little more drier than usual because of the weather conditions here, but other than that, I am pretty much a combination skin type. So liquid foundation works very well for me. Now remember, in liquid foundation, you can talk about whether you're going to use dewy or matte. I'm not going to go into too many details about each one of these. In today's tutorial, I'm just going to go over the 4 types. So we discussed liquid foundation. Now let's talk about cream foundation. Cream foundations usually have a heavier base, so if you're looking for more full coverage, and I would also recommend this for someone who has more drier skin. So if you have combination skin like me, cream foundation may not be the best foundation for you, and you can always build upon a liquid foundation if you're looking for heavier coverage. Now let's talk about stick foundation. Stick foundations are typically more on the higher end foundations. As a matter of fact, the one that comes to mind for me is Hourglass. I actually have their foundation. It's a little more difficult to blend, so I try to stay away from more of those foundations, but they're very good for oily skin because the oils in your skin will naturally make it a little easier to blend. Now the final foundation that I'd like to talk about is a powder foundation. Now this is the least of my favorite of all the foundations, only because too much powder for my skin type and any more mature skin type is really going to set into fine lines, and you really don't want that look. So I really do steer away from the powder type of foundations. Now let's talk about the second step, and that is finding your undertone. Now typically what you want to do in this area is you want to look at your inside of your wrist, and you'll see some veins here. Like for example, if I looked at my wrist, I have like greenish veins, and that's really going to determine my undertone. So look at your veins and see what type of colors you see there in the veins. There are 3 types of undertones that you'll find most common. There's the cool undertone, the warm undertone, and a neutral undertone. Now with the cool undertone, typically what you will see is more bluish purple veins, and this will let you know that you are in the cool family. Now for me personally, when I look at my undertones, I am actually a warm undertone, because if you're looking at warm undertones, they typically have more of your greener veins that come through, and that's a real clear indication that you're warm color. Now the final undertone is called neutral. When you look at your veins, if you see more of a bluish green, then this might be an indicator that you are in the neutral family of undertones. Another tip for finding your undertone is the jewelry that you wear. If you typically can rock silver, then more than likely you're cool tone. However, if you look a little better in gold jewelry, then more than likely you're a warm tone. Now there are some that can wear both gold and silver and look amazing, then more than likely you are a neutral color. One final tip for your undertone: the fairer your skin is, then the more likely you're in the cooler undertone family. So now let's move to step 3 in finding your right foundation. Now this is the part of the video that I highly recommend that you share with your friends because we all struggle with finding that right foundation. Now remember I mentioned earlier when I was talking about undertones that some foundations come with the undertone already mentioned in the name. For example, I use Too Faced Born This Way foundation in the color Warm Beige. So I mentioned earlier that my undertone is warm, and so that is really my preferred foundation to go to. So you may go into a beauty store to get a foundation color, and the person that works at the counter may take your wrist, and they may take just the underside of your wrist, and they may try and color match there. Now the challenge with color matching from your wrist is that the color of your wrist could be very different than the color of your face. So you want to be sure that that is not the mechanism that they use to test your foundation. Now I typically like to go and pull 3 foundations. The one that I think is my match, and then one that's a little darker, and then one that's a little lighter. I take those 3 foundations and I go to a window where there is natural light because that is going to be the best indication of whether or not your foundation is matching. If you try and look at a mirror inside the store, the lighting in the store is not going to give you the exact match color. So when I'm in a beauty store and I'm in front of a window that gives me natural light, I now take the foundation and do a test on my face. Now when you're testing your foundation, you want to test right from your jawline and blend under your chin into the neck area. And the reason you want to blend is because you want to ensure that there is a color match all the way down. Like me, so in the summer I tan, and so I'm probably darker the rest of my body because I like to sometimes cover my face because I don't want to get any wrinkles, you know how that is. So I cover my face, and as a result of covering my face, I may be much lighter on my face. So I really do try and take the foundation all the way down to my neckline just to ensure there's a good blend. So let's begin our color match. I'm going to first of all go in with Bare Minerals Fresh Faced Made to Fit Me. This foundation claimed to be able to match your skin type perfectly. All you did was uploaded an app to your phone, took a few photos of your skin and face and even the shoulder area, and then it was supposed to match you perfectly. So let's see how well it matched me. So really what you want to do is just take a little here and then blend right into the jawline and down into the neck area. So immediately you can see this is not my skin color. It's a little on the fairer side and a little ashy. And remember I mentioned if you get a little bit of an ashy undertone, this is probably not the right color for you. So let's try another foundation. I'm actually going to go in with Bare Minerals, and it's called Bare Pro. And this was supposed to be a color that was going to match me perfectly. It is in Sable 21. So I'm going to take just a little pump of this and let's see if it is a good match or not. So again, I'm just going to go right in here and drag along my jawline. And as you can see, now this color is a little red for me. And again, I mentioned if you start to get an orangey tone or a red tone, the color is probably too dark for your skin tone. So just comparing the two, this is the Bare Minerals that I put on earlier, that was the Made to Fit Me, and now the Bare Minerals Sable 21 color in Bare Pro. This is definitely not a color match for me. So let me go in with one more foundation. This is actually my go-to foundation. I really do like it a lot. This is the Too Faced Born This Way foundation, and my color is Warm Beige. Now remember I mentioned some foundations will have the undertone already in its name. So for example, this being Warm Beige and I'm warm, then this would be a good color for me. So let's try it and see if this one is a match. So again, I'm just going to take a few pumps of this, just a small amount, only to test on my face. And let's go now to an area I hadn't touched yet. And now I'm going to bring it all the way down to my jawline. And just blend it in a little. Now one of the ways you know your foundation is a good match is which one disappears, like which one can you hardly see and blends in pretty nicely. I would definitely have to say the Born This Way foundation in Warm Beige, because as you can see, the other ones are way, way, way too light for my skin. So this one here is actually a perfect match for my skin type. So now let's move into the final step. This would be step 4, lightening or darkening your foundation. So let's say you followed all the tips that I provided you and you come home and you still realize that the foundation you have is either too dark or too light. First instinct may be to either return it or discard it because it's not a good color match. But before you decide to throw it into the trash, let me give you some tips on what you might be able to do with those colors that don't exactly match you. Now, one of the options you have is to blend both foundations together. Typically, I find myself blending foundations because I really am different colors throughout the year, so I might have to do that. But let's say you have a darker foundation that's not quite a match and a lighter foundation that's not quite a match. Try mixing the two together and you may find that you have a perfect match. So another option you have is to add cover drops to your foundation to either darken them or lighten the foundation. So when I'm trying to darken my foundation, I use Cover Effects cover drops. Now this is really good for when I want to make my foundation just a little bit darker. I'll take the foundation that I use and then I'll just take maybe 1 or 2 drops and mix it together, blend it into my skin, and then typically it's the right match. Now there's no right formula for how many drops. You really have to just kind of play with it and see what works best for you. So when I want to lighten my foundation, I use the LA Girl Pro Coverage in white. And typically, again, same thing, take a few drops, mix it in with my foundation, and then I can use it more in the winter months when I'm a little bit lighter. Now, one final option is to use perhaps the lighter foundation as an under eye concealer. I have like the foundation that I showed earlier from Bare Minerals. I now like to use that sometimes as my under eye concealer because it was so much lighter than my typical skin type. So before you go spending too much money on any given foundation, I'd highly recommend going to a store like Sephora where they are able to give you samples of foundation and then you can just take them home and test them out. I think that's really one of the best ways to go. I typically go and get samples to see what works best for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to tell your friends about this channel and remember to subscribe. Thank you.